Severe obesity is becoming so common in the United States and indeed in many other modern societies and cultures that it's almost taken as ubiquitous. Like, oh, well, that's just a normal way to be. There's a movement afoot called Healthy at Any Size or Healthy at Every Size, saying you can be completely healthy if you're severely obese, that people should not, and I don't think we should judge people who are severely obese, but I do think we should try to help them. And I have a amazing guest with me today. We've been friends for years, and her journey is something else, and I can't wait for you to hear about it. Let me introduce Laura Spath. Laura, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you today. You've been very busy on Instagram and YouTube, but actually you've been very busy in real life with your husband, Chris, and your beautiful children. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to chat with you again.
Oh, absolutely. I always love our chats. Let's start off just right out of the gate. Tell me, how did you get so fat?
You know, it just was one bite at a time and way too many of them. It is one of those things that you kind of don't know how it happens. And all of a sudden you turn around and you realize that you just don't even recognize yourself anymore. And you kind of get so overwhelmed, you just don't even know where to start. But I know that for me, it was 100% because of processed foods, fast food, convenience foods. You know, I was raised with very healthy choices, not low carb at all, but my mom baked our homemade bread. We grew vegetables in the garden. My dad was a hunter, or we had beef that was from a farmer down the street, you know, local pork. And then, you know, tragedy happens, life happens. I had a brother pass away. My parents got divorced. So what does the next step happens is Hamburger Helper, those Betty Crocker biscuits and meals. You know, I started doing a lot of the cooking when I was about 15 for our family, which was rice-a-roni, packaged foods, and started to put on some weight. And then over time, I went to college and moved across the street from a Taco Bell and realized I could grab breakfast at the gas station every single morning on my way to class. And you just don't realize how each one of those individual choices turns into your health rapidly declining. And you know, I gained a tremendous amount of weight.
Now, let me be very clear. When I use the word fat, I get to do that because I used to be fat. I was obese and pre-diabetic. So I'm in no way judging or denigrating. I'm just calling it what it is. This is the common vernacular. Were you a fat kid, or were you lean when you were younger?
Yeah, I was always really lean. Everybody in my family was lean, and we were very active. I spent all my time outside. You know, we didn't have a TV when I was growing up, which is obviously wasn't even common back then. You know, I'm almost 40. So even when I was growing up, it was just very common for everybody to be inside. And so I was active, running around on the farm. Playtime for us was playing back in the fields and building a fort in the cornfields. And, you know, I don't remember snacking all the time as a kid. And I know that that was reflective in my health. We don't see, you know, I was a very lean, healthy kid, and we don't see that today, unfortunately. You know, so many kids now with changes in foods that they're eating, the school, the dietary guidelines, I could rant on for days. But, you know, I know that looking back, it wasn't until I introduced that more sedentary lifestyle and more processed foods that my weight really started to come on, which was, you know, right after puberty or as I was going through puberty.
And it's kind of hard sometimes to tease out what was the root cause. Was it the processed food? Was it the increase in inactivity? Was it the drama of the losses that you had in your life? Or was it some combination? I would say it was definitely multifactorial. But what if you had those losses in your life and you hadn't become sedentary, but you had just really ramped up your intake of highly processed food? I would opine that you would have still packed on the pounds, maybe not as many, but you would have been overweight, if not obese or severely obese. Now, everybody watching this on YouTube and TikTok and Rumble and other places, this was filmed live in front of our private community. We've got thousands of folks in this community trying to rediscover what is a proper human diet. And so we're going to entertain some questions from the community. If you would like to have a chance to ask questions directly to some of the leading authorities on nutrition and medicine and health in the world, and also just amazing, amazing, inspirational people like Laura Spath. Consider joining the community. Laura, how much have you lost? I'm going to pull up some pictures so that they might be a little uncomfortable, but I'm going to pull up some pictures while we talk. How heavy did you get, and how much have you lost?
So my highest weight, I think in that picture with the white tank top, I was exactly 263 pounds. I went to the doctor that day, and that number on the scale really shook me. And how much have I lost? Hundreds and hundreds of pounds over the years of gaining and losing and gaining and losing. But from that picture, I then went on to lose 120 pounds doing carnivore. And that was over the course of a year. And I actually have found that my health is best a little bit more than my lowest weight ever, which I do think when people lose a lot of weight, they kind of find that where they are healthiest and settle and find themselves long-term is maybe not that quite lowest weight ever. So I'm 100 pounds less than that picture, and still figuring out what long-term looks like as I work to build muscle and stay healthy.
Yep. And you mentioned previous weight loss. You had some success with weight loss. Let's talk about that for a second, because I see on X all the time and other social media platforms, people saying you can lose weight on any diet. It's just a matter of eating fewer calories than you burn. What were the diets that you actually lost weight on, and how did you ultimately fail on those diets?
So I kind of agree with that. You can lose weight. And like you said, it's a matter of how can you keep it off and what's healthy about losing those weights. I did like a Bible study weight loss where you're supposed to let God, which I'm a Christian and I believe that, but it was this weight loss program where you kind of like pray for God to intervene. And if you order food at a restaurant and then they're out of that or dessert, then that means God's telling you shouldn't have that food. So I've went from that. I did Weight Watchers for a while, tracked a lot of points, obviously just trying to cut out sugar and carbs, did Atkins for a little while, which I think was great and it was effective. And then I saw a documentary called Forks Over Knives and thought, oh, vegan, gotta go vegan. Yep. Lost all of these plans. I lost weight. So I was able to lose weight very quickly. Losing weight was never really the problem. It was being able to sustain it. So yes. Being vegan, for instance, like my hair started falling out. I had a lot of digestive issues, a lot of skin issues. And so while I did lose weight, I also then I would find myself kind of binging on meat and calories and trying to give my body nutrients because it was just feeling so drained at the time. So a lot of low carb in there as well. And then eventually found keto and carnivore.
One of the main things that trips people up is when they have to go to social functions or they have to travel. It's so much more tempting to fall off the wagon in those situations. Now, people may not know this about you, but you travel for a living. You're a professional traveler. What are your tips and tricks for when you're on the road, either at the airport or taking a long car trip? How do you stay carnivore in those situations?
First and foremost, you just have to decide that you're going to do it. You just have to decide that going back is not an option, that you're not going to give yourself an out of like, there was nothing else in front of me. And you can prepare yourself and take away a lot of those temptations and triggers by bringing your own food, by knowing what your options are. I can find something that I can eat at any restaurant other than possibly a vegan restaurant. So I'm pretty good about that. And the beauty of carnivore is that if for some reason a group of coworkers from my corporate job all ended up at a vegan restaurant, I would just say, I'll have some water, thank you, and I'll sit and visit you because I'm not this ravenously hungry person who has to eat 6 times a day, 8 times a day like I did when I tried vegan diet. So I bring a lot of my own food. I usually do research ahead of time, knowing where can I get a burger patty? Where can I get some chicken wings? And what are my options going to be? And then also, like, I was traveling for work all last week for my job, and I had brought dried meats. I had some beef sticks. I had like lots of good options so that if I was in a situation where no food was available for me, that I would feel healthy eating, then I already knew it took away all of that stress and anxiety because I had food that I could grab in a pinch.
I love that. I made a video, a short on my YouTube channel about getting McDonald's quarter
Oh,
pound patties, and people lost their minds.
yeah.
What's your, and I have to be honest, when it comes to, if I'm in a pinch, I'll either fast. If I'm not hungry, I just won't eat. And I'll do like you, I'll sip a cup of coffee or a glass of water and just chat with whoever I'm supposed to be having lunch with. But I agree with you. I think at any restaurant, if you have a conversation with the wait staff, you can get a carnivore friendly meal. It may just be 6 quarter pound burger patties. What's your favorite fast food restaurant? And then also Susan says, what's your favorite chain? So it maybe not a fast food chain, but what are your kind of tips and tricks at specific restaurants where you can get something that's carnivore friendly?
I would say I've never had an issue with a burger place not serving me a patty by itself, and even cheaper if you just ask for it, a la carte. My favorite, I hate bragging about it, but it's definitely In-N-Out, but I know not a lot of people have access to that. I think you're getting one in Nashville sometime soon, but Wendy's is a favorite of mine too, because they're thicker and usually they're juicier. I usually bring my own salt because a lot of the salt at the places has the packets of salt, has some dextrose and things in it. So when possible, I try to add my own salt to things, but definitely someplace like, no matter where I am, I can find a burger patty at Wendy's or preferably In-N-Out, something like that.
How did you start? What was your motivation to try carnivore? Did you see a video or did you read an article? And then walk us through how was it an overnight, or did you kind of moderate down? Did you start with low carb keto? How did that progress work? Because there's a ton of people out there who are severely obese. They're miserable. Where do they start? How did you start?
I think that I probably would have just jumped straight carnivore had I known that at the time. And I think that's kind of your two options, is you either just go like all in carnivore or you ease yourself down. And which I don't think there's a right or wrong method, to be honest. It kind of just depends on like what's sustainable for most people. But this was back in 2018. I started keto just because that was the boom at the time. Everybody was keto was blowing up and becoming really popular. And I was in the groove, losing weight, feeling good, cutting things out, but I still was doing a lot of things like macadamia nuts and low carb tortillas, having a lot of salads and vegetables and Quest bars. And my husband actually found out about the carnivore diet through Sean Baker, like hearing an interview with him. And he's the one that does the majority of the cooking in our house. And so he kind of just stopped cooking vegetables, and he was cooking dinners, grilling steaks and pork chops and things for about a week. I had no intention of going carnivore. I thought he was insane that he didn't need vegetables. And I was like, great, you're going to have a heart attack and leave me here with these kids and I'm going to be alone. And yet he cooked for us for about a week. And I didn't even think about the fact that I wasn't having vegetables or lettuce or sides. And on the end of the week, I had a taco salad, like a big taco bowl of meat, cheese, sour cream, but I put lettuce on it. And that day, my gut just got angry. I got bloated. I got constipated. I started having a lot of digestive issues that I had previously dealt with. And I went, hey, I haven't had any of those issues all week, but I had this salad and my gut just got so angry at me. Maybe there is something to this. And I thought like, well, I'll just try it temporarily to see what it does. And the minute I cut out the vegetables and the macadamia nuts and some of the lots of fiber, all of those issues that I was experiencing went away. And in a lot of ways, my satiety increased because I was eating so much more protein and fat and less empty calorie greens and vegetables and salads. And I found my skin issues started clearing up as well. Like nuts really cause me inflammation, joint issues, acne. Nuts are poison for a carnivore. Like I can name 10 reasons why I can't eat a nut of any kind.
And full disclosure for me, I freaking love nuts, and I suspect you love nuts as well. But the results of eating them, it's like, that's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, I remember bulk buying those big bags of macadamia nuts from Costco, and they said they were going to take them away for the holiday season. I have a picture. I bought 10 bags of those. And let's talk about how long those didn't last me. They should have lasted a year. We went through those way too quick. So that was really it. I didn't even intend to go carnivore or want to go carnivore. It was just like kind of accidentally realized that this is curing all of, I was losing weight on keto, but
Sure.
it wasn't until I went carnivore that it fixed a lot of my other issues, and inevitably is what made it sustainable. So the first time in my life, I didn't lose weight and then regain it all back the minute I needed to go back to normal because I was miserable with what I was doing.
Yeah. So this is Chris's fault that you're a
Yes.
carnivore. I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
I have more respect for him now. I thought you started this, but he's the one.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was anything that let him not eat a vegetable, he was down for. And so he signed up for it very quickly.
I love it. And so a lot of people think, well, these people they just love meat and eggs and they hate vegetables, but that's not true. There are many vegetables I freaking love.
Yeah.
But the consequences of eating them, it's just unacceptable to me.
Right. I always said I loved a big salad, I'll say, but I didn't really love the salad. I loved the croutons and the dressing and the toppings. It wasn't about the veg. I like vegetables, but it's more about the butter on the potato. And it's all the other things that you get to add, which I still add most of those toppings. I just put them on a steak.
But you love those macadamia nuts. I know you do.
Yes.
Let's talk about supplementation. Denise says, do you take supplements? And let me expand that and say, what has your supplement usage looked like over this entire journey? Has it changed at all? Do you take less now or more now on carnivore?
I would call electrolytes a supplement. And so really the only supplement that I've been taking consistently has been some type of electrolyte. Now I use like an element packet, but before I knew about those, I was just mixing up my own ratio or, found some different electrolyte recipes. Redmond has a good electrolyte. So I've always used some type of electrolytes as just a way to get in some extra salt and some good minerals. But I have not consistently supplemented anything. I've played around sometimes with how do I feel with a vitamin D supplement or what happens if I take a zinc supplement. But in reality, I think supplements should be used like a temporary medicine. They should be done to fix something that's an imbalance, almost like how you would take a prescription temporarily. If you shouldn't be having long-term deficiencies in a way that you need. I don't take a vitamin C supplement because I'm deficient in I get enough vitamin C from the meat that I'm eating. So we should treat supplements like a lot of people can, be helped by taking gut support or digestive enzymes in the very beginning. But if you need a supplement long-term, we have to figure out what's the root cause that you're missing. Because unlike when I went vegan, that required a lot of supplements in order to be healthy. And yet a carnivore diet, supplements should be a Band-Aid or temporary medication almost.
Yep, I totally agree. Are you a fan of organ meat or no?
Never. No, definitely
never.
not. I've never eaten liver or organs, or I went to one restaurant once in Spain that specialized, it was a Michelin star restaurant that specialized in like serving these organs delicacies. And I had pig's brain and things like that. But that was a one-time experience. It's not, and right. I don't take organ supplements of any kind either.
And so let's be very clear. You don't really take any supplements over and above electrolytes.
Right.
And you have not done so for how long now?
It has been 6 years, 6.5 years actually now.
So, and are you a lion diet? Are you beef only, or do you, what meats do you eat? Because I think this is fascinating. A lot of people are like, oh, you've got to include organs or you've got to supplement. You've been doing this for 6 years with no supplements over and above electrolytes. What's your menu look like? What meats are included?
I just eat a variety of meats. I have kind of tried the lion diet for a while, and that was great. And I've done things, I obviously went then all the way to the keto side, but my daily life is, some ground beef, a lot of steaks. For budget purposes, we eat a lot of chicken and pork. My lunch today is going to be a steak with a side of pork belly. I love having two meats on one plate, which makes it interesting for me. It makes me feel like I'm having a side. So I'll have a steak and a chicken leg or some chicken thighs and a hamburger patty. So I really try to mix that up. I eat a lot of shrimp, but I'm just not a fish fan. So I don't eat a lot of fish, which I should. It's healthy, but I have just never, I grew up in Indiana. We didn't have fish there. So I never grew up with fish. to learn to love that. But it's a really, there's not a, if it had a face on it, I'll eat it. I eat a lot of eggs, bacon, all the good stuff.
Yeah. Recently, Nisha and I went to dinner. We were in Nashville at a conference, or in Louisville, Kentucky. And we went to Morton's, and I had a big fat bone-in ribeye, and they had a side of the thickest, smokiest pork belly that was cooked to perfection. It was literal heaven. Like my entire being was just happy.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I've had that one before too. Yeah. So good.
Oh, so good. So we covered organs. So you're not a fan of organs. When's the last time, how long ago has it been since you ate organs of any kind?
I mean, once in 6.5 years, I ate some organs at that restaurant, which was a few months ago.
And I think you guys can tell by listening to Laura and looking at Laura, she's not deficient in anything. So it makes you question a lot of the kind of dogma that you hear in the carnivore community. And let's talk about that dogma, because anytime there's dogma in a movement, there are dogmatic people. Yep. There are militants in that space. And we see this a lot in the carnivore community. And I really hate that this is happening, but it seems like it's a law of human nature. Anytime something gets popular, people start trying to make rules.
Yeah.
What do you think about the more militant? And we don't have to name any names. I know you're a common sense country girl, just like I'm a country boy. We don't need to name names, but we can talk about the behaviors, because this turns a lot of people off. It comes across as confrontational and arrogant and rude, and I don't think it's necessary. What do you see in the carnivore community with regards to this militancy?
I think there's oftentimes a concern of, what can I eat or can't I eat, because what's considered carnivore? Like, it doesn't really matter if something is considered carnivore or not. What matters is, how does that make you feel? And does that food help you with your health? If you want to eat, somebody would say, can I have an avocado? Is that carnivore? I mean, no, but does it matter? Like, if that helps you get in some good fat, if it doesn't negatively react to you, if you're not binging on it and gaining weight from it, have yourself an avocado. And I feel that way with things like spices. You know, I am maybe not considered carnivore to a lot of people because I would include some spices on a regular basis, or maybe a sauce or a little chimichurri here and there. That's a plant. So maybe cancel this podcast that we're doing. But I think that there are a lot of people who can benefit from trying a very strict version of carnivore without the seasonings and without things at first, to find out how those foods make you feel. And if you want to include some vegetables, I am not the all plants are killing you person to share that. I think sometimes we put so many restrictions on what is carnivore that we end up pushing good people away who could benefit by going 90% of the way there. But because that 100% of, I have to eat raw organs and I can't have my stevia in my coffee and I can't have coffee at all. Like, we push away so many people who could heal. And there is a small, who need it desperately. And there is a small percentage of people who have to cut out all of those things. Although I would argue it's because there's something else root cause going on that they haven't addressed and healed. Like, you shouldn't need to be that meat, salt, and water. And even Michaela, in a positive way, I'm saying she's the first one to tell you there's something else going on. And her goal is to be able to include other things long-term. That type of strictness should be done the same way we supplement, of identifying what foods negatively affect you. And it's done to diagnose what is affecting me from food, and maybe what's something else that's going on that carnivore can't fix. Because carnivore has saved my life, my husband's life, my mom's life. Hundreds of people ripple effect from that. And so many people that I talk with, but it can't cure everything, but we can use it as a tool. And if we put so many limitations on the requirements to be a perfect carnivore, I think we just lose so many people who really, really need this.
I totally agree. When you do stray off pure carnivore, and maybe I need to change the title of this to Fake Carnivore Laura Spath, because you eat plants sometimes. That's a joke. What are the plants when you don't include plant foods in your diet? What are your favorite plants that don't seem to really bother you physiologically or mentally don't seem to make you bring up the old cravings, et cetera?
You know, the thing that I include most regularly is just going to be spices and seasonings. I like to throw garlic and all kinds of onion powder and all things on in some meatballs, and I mix up my own taco seasoning, those types of, that's a lot of spices that I include. We spent 3 months in Spain earlier this year as a family, and they love chimichurri on all of this, like some of the best meat I've had in my life. So now I've really started enjoying having chimichurri on, which is a lot of herbs and things. But you know, if I love a good grilled red onion, but if I eat that too much of it or 2 days in a row, I start getting kind of gut issues and you kind of just don't feel right. I travel a lot for my job and I'm very careful in my house we don't eat seed oils. You know, we keep all those things out of our diet. Again, I'm one of those people that I do the best I can in most situations. And often I can find something with no seed oils in it at a restaurant. But I had chicken wings a couple of days ago and they were not from Buffalo Wild Wings, so they weren't fried in tallow. And after eating out too many days in a row, I sometimes just start to feel a little puffy, or, you know, I might feel like I have dry skin or some itchy eyes and things that I can just tell that things have not been clean for a couple of days. And then I'm really more careful about what I include, those types of things. But really, regularly, it's really just seasonings.
Yeah. Same for me. And macadamia every now and then, or no?
No, that would be quick. That's one of those things for me where one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And I can very easily have no macadamia nuts personally, but having one is that big old bulk bag from Costco is going to be destroyed very quickly. And then, so it's my gut.
For me, it's cashews. I can go and not even think about a cashew, but if I eat one cashew, I'm going to eat the whole damn container. That's just going to happen.
Yeah.
During this, let's look at your pictures again, and I want you to talk people through this. Tell me about this picture on the left in the red top.
So we had gone back to, that was just visiting family, and I even thought I thought I looked good in that picture. You know, I thought this skirt is really flattering. Look at this shirt is so flattering because the sleeves are longer and kind of covers things up. And then that was one of those pictures that you see and you're like, oh, I guess I need to delete that one. And I can't tell you the hundreds and hundreds of pictures that I have that just, I was either hiding behind, like it's very rare. And anybody who has lived obese for a period of time knows how much we hide from the camera. We instantly delete pictures. Like, I think I only kept it because you see my daughter and my grandfather, and there was just so many special memories in that picture. But yeah. I look at that picture and I realize how happy I was, and it's a wonderful memory with my family. But I also can just tell you how uncomfortable I was. And that entire trip, I was so hot and sweating and just really miserable. Packing for that trip was just such an emotional thing, trying to find clothes that I felt would make me comfortable and not represent all this weight that I had gained. And so there's just such, like, there's happiness there. I'm smiling. It was a fun moment with my family, but there's also a lot of emotional stress and just physical discomfort that I'm dealing with there.
Let's talk about that, and you can kind of segue into non-scale victories, because although we've talked a lot about severe obesity, you had some other benefits as well. And tell us about those other benefits that don't involve getting on the bathroom scale.
You know, I feel like I still experience so many of those. I rode a horse last week for the first time. And my corporate job, they took everybody horseback riding. And I had a conversation with the rancher there. And they said that they would only let somebody who was 220 pounds get on these horses. And I was like, oh, that would have been, I mean, imagine that conversation that I would have had to have with my boss if he's like, we're going to take everybody horseback riding for an event. And I'm like, well, I can't go. I'm too fat. And it's just really limiting that. And just, you know, I travel so much
or Laura, your boss somebody would have brought up the horse riding idea.
Yes.
And if your boss were sensitive at all, he'd been like, yeah, we can't do that. There's no way Laura's going to be able to do that. And that's not fair to her. So really everybody on the team would have been affected by your severe obesity. And then you might have caught wind of that and you would have realized, oh, wow, okay, everybody got screwed on the horse riding thing because I'm obviously too fat. Yeah,
that would have been really mortifying. The year before, we all went hiking in Vail. Well, that picture in the white tank top, I was getting ready to have knee surgery because I had a torn meniscus because my body couldn't handle carrying all of that weight around. I'm not a football player. I had no injuries. It just was my knees were wearing out. And so now I went hiking in Vail a year ago and was able to do that and just be active with that same group. It wasn't me that was holding the rest of the group back. And then that translates to time with my family. You know, I'm able to obviously keep up with my kids as they grow, be active with them, and not be physically exhausted or just emotionally scared of putting myself out there and what might happen. I can't do things because of my health and my weight and how that's holding me back.
Let's talk about the difference in mindset between these two pictures. In the red top, it's obvious that outfit was very strategic.
Yeah.
With long sleeves and a long billowy skirt. You were trying to hide things.
Yeah.
But this picture on the right in the white tank top, there's a different mindset right there. What made you stand in front of the mirror with your phone and take these blatant pictures that show what's going on with your body? What had changed?
Well, nothing. I was never going to show those pictures to anybody. Those were me saying, you need to get your stuff together. Like, you're out of control right now. And I needed a wake up call for myself. And so I literally took those pictures and put them as the background on my phone, just so I would have this reminder of, you know, like, you got to get yourself under control. And then I hid them away in a locked folder on my phone that I thought nobody would ever see. And they were just me to say, like, you need some hard truth right now for yourself. And, you know, you can, even when I started posting those pictures after I lost weight, everybody that knew me goes, I had no idea that you were that big. And it is because you never see, I live in Phoenix and it's 120 degrees in the summer. And yet I had on 3 layers. I had on a tank top and my blouse and a cardigan and long pants because I was hiding among the layers of clothes, sweating. But nobody, even in my life, kind of quite knew, because you're always hiding those things. And so this was just, for me, literally looking in the mirror saying, you got to do something about this before it's too late.
I always encourage people when they get started on this journey, whether it's with low carb, keto, ketovore, carnivore, take these pictures, take these uncomfortable pictures. You can hide them on your phone. You don't have to post them right now. But now, Laura, now that you've won effectively, you won. Now you can post these pictures and go, look at this, guys. This is the journey that you can also have. I encourage everybody to do that. Let's look at tell me about this picture on the left. This is obviously a very fun family outing with these beautiful babies. And Chris, who it's his fault you're a carnivore.
Yeah. Well, guess what? I'll blame him for us being in that sick. No, it wasn't his fault we were sick. That was a team effort. I'll tell you, we got married, and there's nothing like eating your way to sickness with your significant other. I think that was something that we enjoyed a lot. But he's 10 years older than me. And he, in that picture, he has that sleeve on his arm because this was our big first outing after he had been released from the hospital after having necrotizing fasciitis, which was flesh-eating bacteria that was a complication from his diabetes. He was so severely type 2 diabetic. He got a very small infection on his arm, and that turned into full-blown flesh-eating bacteria. And we, Christmas Day, he went to the hospital and didn't come home for 6 weeks. And we had we thought we lost it. The doctor said, find everybody to come say goodbye to him. And, this picture was, I think maybe in like May or maybe April, actually, probably for Nathaniel's birthday. And this was really the first time that we had all gone out after thinking that he was never going to come home from the hospital again. And he'd had dozens of surgeries on his arm and recovery. And, I think too, like, this is probably the lowest moment in my health because I had just spent the last few months, and obviously Chris went through the hard part, but being a spouse of someone who is sick and dying and trying to work a full-time job and keep up with toddlers. And I was still breastfeeding. So I was sitting next to him in the hospital, pumping in the ICU, and he was in a coma. And then I would take the milk home for the day to a family member who had flown in to help us because we had no family here in Arizona. And I spent, this is me at the end of the hardest season of my life, 3 and 4 months of just kind of going back and forth. And you can just tell, like, I'm smiling, but there is I just look exhausted. And I was, Yeah.
I'm sure you were. During his hospitalization, did any of the doctors, the medical staff, did they at any point kind of imply or just outright say he got this because he's an uncontrolled type 2 diabetic?
Not one. And they immediately put him on insulin. He was given the diabetic menu, but again, he eats like a toddler. So his entire menu and what he was able to eat was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, chicken fingers, and pizza. And then that was what they and pancakes for breakfast. And that was what they let him eat as an uncontrolled diabetic in the hospital. And then I have pictures of him with his stomach hanging out full of purple spots and bruises because of the insulin shots that they were giving him every day. And then they sent him home. This is kind of what led us to starting Carnivore. Was obviously our family had been through so much trauma. It took us like a year, embarrassingly, to kind of crawl ourselves, stand on our own 2 feet again. And we were eating terrible that whole time. But about a year later, as Chris recovered, he found out that, 70% of people who get necrotizing fasciitis get it again.
Yep. And
he started researching, how does that happen? Why does this happen? I'm going to leave my wife and kids. And he has an older daughter who I'm going to leave them without me if I don't figure out how this happened. And it happened because he's metabolically damaged and because his diabetes was so uncontrolled that his body couldn't handle that.
Yeah. And I know that one day in the future, y'all's kids are going to become adult aware enough to just be so thankful that years ago you and Chris said, you know what, this is stupid. Yeah. What are we doing? You almost died. You almost made me a widow. Something bad could have happened to me, because when you're severely obese, your risk of death from any cause, including car wrecks and falling down the stairs, goes way up, just because you're so unsteady, you're so top heavy, you're so unhealthy. Your kids are going to be so thankful when they get older. And then when you guys have some grandbabies, you'll be able to tell the story one day. And it's a beautiful story. During this 6 years, be honest, Laura, have you fallen off the wagon, and how bad was it? And then how did you stop, push the pause button and say, stop this foolishness, get back on the wagon?
I think the mindset that shifted for me was realizing that this can't be a diet. And it's so cheesy. Like, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. But it has to be where you wake up every day saying, this is what I eat and this is what I do. And I'm not here saying I've been perfect for six and a half years. But what I am saying is that there is no like extended period of time where I'm off the rails. And I think during COVID, during 2020, we all of a sudden like got sent home and had nowhere to go and nothing to do. And unfortunately, I was one of those people who went like, great, let's just eat then. Nobody's around. Like, what else do I got to do? And it's stressful and everybody's trapped at home. And I ate way too much. And that was probably the biggest moment in the last, 6.5 years where I had to say, like, we got to do something or you're going to go all the way back to where you were before. It would be so easy for me to gain all my weight back again. And so really, that was a shift for me of realizing how quickly I could backslide, to then saying, we can't do this. That was another big wake up call for me, saying like, we can't do this anymore. We have to just keep moving forward. Like, this can't just be, before that, I was on a carnivore diet to lose weight. Right. I wasn't living a carnivore lifestyle. And it was still always this temporary thing. And I saw how quickly, if I went back to normal, would I destroy all the progress that I had made again. And so at that point, it no longer became this, like, I go on vacation and go normal and then expect myself to be able to get back on track when I come home. And it's turned into like, even if you have something else, it's starting the next bite, the next meal, the next day, and realizing how can you build that consistency. I think that's people's number one problem with long-term health with carnivore or keto or anything, is you don't have to be perfect, but how can you be consistent long-term? And the more that we dramatize this, like, I ate something I shouldn't, I shame, I'm terrible, I have to start all the way over again. No, you don't. You've learned so much. You've come so far. You are not the same person that you were, 2 days ago. You're the same person you were 2 days ago. You just ate something that doesn't make you feel good. And rather than letting that shame spiral you out of control It's saying, let's move forward. Let's take reflect. And this is the biggest thing for me. How did that happen? Why did I end up eating that food? Was it an emotional reaction? Was I unprepared? Was I hungry? Was I not sleeping well? And we have to take a step back. And that's been the biggest thing for me in building consistency, is to figure out how and why are those things happening? And then how can I learn from it and be better next time? And that's why, since I then relost that weight after 2020, I've been able to kind of maintain this pretty steady weight for the last 4 years now. And it's just because you stop putting so much pressure on yourself and you realize my baseline has to be eating only foods that make me feel good. And that needs to be how I wake up every day, with that mindset.
I love that. I love that. It's very powerful words. Deborah has a question. What dairy, if any, do you eat? And when you were getting started, did you count macros and track all that? And do you still track anything like that?
Well, I love dairy. I love cheese. I don't drink coffee, so just personal preference. But so I'm not a heavy cream person, which I do think can kind of add up for a lot of people. But I've had my fair share of moments where I eat a whole brick of cheese in one sitting, and that's carnivore, but that doesn't work for me. I can't do that. So I really have to treat any type of dairy and cheese like a condiment, like sprinkle a little cheese on a taco salad or have some on my eggs, but it needs to be a condiment and not a part of my meal or the main part of my diet. And that's been like, I'll probably never cut out cheese. Would I weigh a little less if I cut out all cheese? Yeah, but we also have to be happy in our lives. So I'm going to keep it. In the beginning, I really didn't count any macros at all. I just was eating steaks and fasting. I mean, I do think that's a big part of it as well. But I think then very quickly, actually, I realized that I was under eating, and I was under eating protein, and I still experienced some amount of hair loss any type of dramatic change in your weight, you're probably going to have hair shed. But also I was, even on carnivore, was under eating protein just because I wasn't eating enough in general. And so now I track protein macros just to ensure that I'm not under eating, which I think is one of the number one problems for women, especially. So I try to hit, 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. So I'm shooting for that 130, 140 grams of protein a day. And I don't track that every day. I just check in with myself occasionally to say, hey, based on these average meals that I'm eating, am I really eating enough? And then I think fat is a lever to, based on your digestive system and your weight loss. And I think sometimes we get a little too obsessed with the perfect macros versus like, if you told me you had to hit these exact macros every single day in order to be successful on carnivore, I would have never lasted 6 years. I would not be here, because I can't worry about that in my normal everyday life with busy kids and a family. And like, I just got to make sure I'm not under eating. And then I do the best that I can with everything else. And I think that's another example of, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, where we try so hard sometimes to say, hey, Dr. Berry, I want to lose weight. Tell me, what are my perfect macros to lose weight and to do carnivore? You can give that to them, but if they can't stick to it, it's not going to work. I can give you your perfect fasting protocol and all this 8-step process to look just like I do, which shouldn't be your goal anyway. But that's not going to work if it doesn't work in your real life. I eat lunch and dinner. You might need to eat breakfast and lunch, and you might need to eat 3 meals a day because you had previous, gastric surgeries, and something is different for you. You have to figure out what. I'm kind of I'm standing on my soapbox here, but
please continue. Yeah. I love it.
No, this is why sometimes we get too obsessed with what's the right way to do it and the perfect way to do it and the foods that I'm allowed to have. And you have to realize that the only way you're going to stick to this as a lifestyle is if you like it and it makes you feel good and you feel full, and it's something that you can stick with long term. And that has been the biggest shift for me, is figuring that out.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a couple of articles in the corporate media recently about the carnivore diet, and it seems that it's always the pictures painted of, this is a bro thing. This is, men eating lots of red meat. But there's a huge component of women in the carnivore community. People are shocked when I start telling them. They're like, what? Yeah, it's huge. And actually, I see women getting quicker, better,
Yeah.
more lasting, more life-changing results from carnivore. Typically men just reverse their obesity and their type 2 diabetes and lower their blood pressure, and that's it. They may have some other benefits they don't want to talk about, but man, the transformation in women. Talk to the women watching this and tell them that carnivore is not for bros.
Yeah, I think the majority of the people that I talk to are women, and it's not even just because I am one. It's because, like, when I first started my Instagram, there was really no women that were public on social media talking about this kind of stuff. And now that's the majority. It's hard to find, other than a few of you doctors, it's hard to find a lot of men who are just casually talking about this lifestyle. And I do think it grew because it is a very female thing to just like talk on stories and share. That's a very common thing in the
Sure.
mommy blogger world and in this world. So I think that, there have been so many great female voices who've been able to share how we've made this a lifestyle. And I think that helps. But, I see people all the time who heal their PCOS and their inflammation and are now able to regulate their cycles and have proper hormones. Thyroid we see a lot of improvements on your thyroid. Obviously hair is a big one. We see healthier hair and skin and inflammation. And you know what? I think there is a huge unspoken problem in our society of women with gut issues. And you see it in the memes and the reels on Instagram that are like these funny videos that these marriage videos make. It's like a successful marriage is always with a guy who forgets his keys and a woman with stomach problems. And it's like, it's always these women with stomach problems.
Yep.
And I think that's obviously not something that women want to talk about. And it's yet probably the easiest and quickest thing to resolve on a carnivore diet. Your other things like, look, thyroid and hormones take a little tweaking. They take more long-term. You might have been sick for a long time and that takes longer, but reversing diabetes, fixing your gut is much faster. And you can see fairly immediate results from that. A lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people see very quick results with those two things.
Here's a question from a tribe member about the kids. How old are your kids now, and are they carnivore? And I'll pull up the picture of your sweet babies while we talk about it.
They are 8 and 10 now. And I think my daughter is 10 and she probably eats more than I do at this point. Like that girl eats a 10-ounce steak for lunch every day. But then she also has herself a big salad and probably a whole zucchini and, a few other things for breakfast today. My son had some protein pancakes with peanut butter on them. And my daughter had some scrambled eggs and bacon and cheese. So I don't know the right answer if they should be strict carnivore. The only thing I know is that I'm trying to raise them with a mindfulness around food that I don't have. And so our goal is for them to understand how foods make them feel, for them to be properly fueled with protein, with good foods, but occasionally they'll have a baked potato with their lunch. And then we kind of say, hey, we're having the potato for lunch. Let's skip the fruit for breakfast, actually, because sugar is sugar is sugar. So we kind of think about like sugar in terms of doses. They look at those pictures of us and they don't talk about, it's a factual term. We use the term fat, but I don't talk about the fact that mom and dad were fat. We say we were sick because we ate too much sugar for too long. And those are the facts.
That's such a great lesson for them. I love that. And
it is saying to them like, hey, it's not that sugar is not good, but it's also like you can't have too much sugar for too long or that's the problem. So they've had ice cream before, but if they do, it's like, hey, now that we've had this ice cream, like let's focus on getting lots of protein in the next couple of days. I don't think any kid needs to snack. So we do 3 meals a day. They eat a variety of mostly whole foods. Like pretty much everything they eat is a one ingredient food other than, they have the almond flour crackers occasionally and a few things like that. But the Siete chips that don't have seed oils, we really try to just focus on giving them quality food and quality ingredients. And then on the occasion that they have ice cream, it's like, hey, now we need to fuel our bodies with lots of protein so that we can feel good. And they're both very active. My daughter won gold at her jiu-jitsu tournament on Saturday. They're
dangerous woman. I love it.
They're both in jiu-jitsu. They're both extremely active. We homeschool. And I do think that helps because they're not around school food and lunches and forced snacks and all that kind of stuff every day. But
that's got to help so much. Beckett and Bonnie are homeschooled as well. Yeah. And if they had to be just in that atmosphere where that stuff was everywhere, that would make it so much harder. I love your strategy of like, we just don't snack around here. We eat discrete meals And at least at our house, it's meat first.
Yes,
And then if
always.
you want some avocado or some nuts or some berries or something, that's fine. But you're going to eat your meat first. And I think that's such a great strategy. One of the main
it was the same thing. Sorry, they had friends over one day, and then when they were younger, and I remember my son coming up to me going, "Hey, he's not eating his meat first. Like, this is a problem. He's breaking the rule." And I'm like, "Well, maybe they don't have that rule in their family." So I agree with you. They know protein first. That's what our body needs to feel good, and then everything else is just make sure you don't do it too much.
Yeah. And let me ask you this, just from one parent to another, do you give your kids the opportunity? Do you ever give them enough rope to hang themselves with regard to diet, like at a church function or some kind of get together? Because we've done this with Beckett, and he's absolutely learned his lesson that stuff will give you squirty poop. So he has learned. Do you let your kids have their liberty at a birthday party?
Yeah, absolutely. And then in some cases, it's like they get cranky later, and we'll usually have a conversation like, do you understand why everybody's upset right now? It's because I say we collectively, but because we ate too much sugar earlier today. And this is why that it's a really hard right now. I'm asking you to clean your room and get your pajamas on. It's not that big of a deal, but we're having a lot of emotions around it because our bodies were given this sugar dose and we're crashing right now. And then it's like, you have a headache the next day. It's like, yeah, maybe that's because we ate a little too much sugar yesterday. Don't we? And so it's just helping them to connect those things. And my daughter now knows hey, going into this tournament, normally they have waffle day on Saturdays where Chris makes them these almond flour Simple Mills waffles. But she's like, you know what? I got a tournament today. I need some eggs instead and some bacon. And I need to make sure that I'm feeling really fueled going into that tournament. And so we're seeing them make those choices on their own. And I think it is because they've experienced that. Maybe giving them nothing ever is a better move. I don't know. But all I know is I would be concerned that would kind of not teach them how to navigate this themselves, because eventually they're not going to be in my control or my care.
No, I think that's a brilliant strategy. Let them have that negative feedback while they're still in your protective embrace, so that then you can teach them. That's a teachable moment. And you can be like, yeah, that's why that happened. Because I think some parents are too strict. We know this in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're not trying to reverse a lifetime of metabolic damage. They know that. Why don't you eat any sugar, Mom? Well, I already hit my limit for my lifetime. Okay.
Right. A long time ago.
If you space it out, you might be able to be like great grandpa who's 93 and has a piece of cake on his birthday, because you know what? He didn't eat dessert every day in his life like I did. So you got a certain amount you can hit in your life. So they're not reversing those things, which is why for me, I can't have berries and some other sugars and even clean sugars, but they can handle those things because they're just trying to stay healthy and grow healthy and not reverse all of this damage that we've already, Chris and I already had.
Yep. I love it. One of the main complaints that I hear from people is that a carnivore diet is too expensive. I can't afford that. And I know you have very specific feelings and opinions about that, as do I. And I want you to really talk to a young mom who may be watching or a woman who's on a fixed income. How can they even begin to start and sustain a carnivore diet if money's an issue?
Well, I think we have to look at things week over week and not meal over meal. Because when you're comparing steak to spaghetti, obviously spaghetti feels so much cheaper. But think about the desserts and the snacks and the side dishes and the drinks. Anything that's not water is expensive. Okay. And I always joke that I used to spend more on ice cream than I actually spend on steak now, which is 100% fact. So it's understanding that you need to buy the meat that you can afford. I still buy the majority of my meat from Costco and Walmart and the grocery store when it's on sale. I check the ads on Wednesdays, and that's where we decide what does our menu look like. But thinking you have to live on these expensive ribeyes all the time isn't how we eat. A lot of chicken and a lot of pork because those are very budget friendly. So I'll have a little beef, and then I'll split a steak with my daughter, and then we'll both have some chicken to go along with it. And that kind of stuff really stretches the budget. So I do think that's a part of it. When you look week over week and you've cut out all of those extra junk, 100%, I'm spending way less now. But not only in terms of food, I'm also not going to doctors. I'm not going to specialists. I'm not on medications. I'm not spending, like, being obese is extremely expensive from a healthcare cost perspective. And just to buy the amount of food that you need in order to stay that size is very expensive. So really calculate what that week over week looks like. And there's so many ways to get things on a great sale, on a deal, and on a budget, that I think it can be comparable to what you're eating now.
I totally agree. Here's the question for Chris, but we'll let you answer from Wendy. After his hospitalization with necrotizing fasciitis caused by his uncontrolled type 2 diabetes, when he started carnivore, how long did it take for him to get his blood sugars under control, to get off the medication, to get a normal A1C?
He dropped his A1C in 3 months, like rapidly. His highest A1C was like 11.9, and he got all the way down to a 4.9. And so that took a year, or like we didn't check it again for a long time, but he was off of his, all of his metformin and all of his blood pressure all of his blood pressure medication and blood sugar medication just within a few months. He also had only been, which I think this is key, he'd only been diabetic for a few years. And so I think and he was very strict with only strict carnivore and doing fasting, following Dr. Jason Fung's protocol of these 36 to 48 hour fasts in order to reverse your diabetes. My mom had been diabetic for 20 years, and it took her more like a year to see that difference. And she still had to incorporate some fasting in that same protocol. So I think that the same thing with anything you're trying to reverse, the longer you've been sick and dealing with it, the longer it might take you to reverse it, and potentially the more strict that you might need to be in order to see those results. But for him, it was just a few months.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly spot on. People who have been metabolically sick for decades,
yes,
you're probably not going to reverse it in 3 months. But if you've only been metabolically unwell for a few years, you could probably reverse that in 3 to 6 months. I think that's very wise advice. So now I want you to think back to how you felt in that picture in the red top. Young wife, young mother, and there are millions of women in the United States and around the world who feel just like you felt in that picture. Talk to them. Talk straight to them. Talk to the young mother. Talk to the young wife. Talk to the teenager who's about to go off to college. What have you learned in your life? Direct it to them. Help them right now. How do I even start this? What do I even do? What's the motivation? Help these women.
I do think you have to look at your life and really take some time to look deep and say, why do you want to feel better? Because I want to get skinny is never going to be a deep enough motivation. So why do you want to feel better? Is it because you want to have kids and want to have a family, or you want to be there for your kids, or you saw a parent who went way too soon because of metabolic dysfunction? Like, that has to be something very personal to you that you really dig into. And then also realize that there is not a doctor, there is not a protocol, there is not a 10-step process that is going to fix this for you. This has to be something that you take the time to figure out. And the best way that you can do that is just to get started. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do a research or find the right book. All of those things and all of that tweaking and learning can come over time. But there is nobody that is just going to give you this 7-step process that's going to fix all of this for you. It is going to be hard, but it is possible once you get started. And all you have to do is start. You just have to focus on one day. And once you get one day under your belt, you're going to realize, like, the hardest day in the last 6 years is the first day. And you got one day down, and then you realize that wasn't that hard. I can do that. And for me, that's been the last 4 years, this switch of you just have to take it one day at a time and one mindset at a time. And that food, Christmas is coming up. That Christmas treat that you make every year and you have every year, you had it once. You can have it again. Okay. I'm not taking this away from you for your whole life. I am not today committing to the rest of my life being a perfect carnivore, but I am saying today I can do it. And I had that food before. It'll be there again next year. Just for today, I'm going to say no, or I'm going to say I'll eat it tomorrow, and then just keep pushing that off and pushing that off. But it's just finding ways to say, like, is this food going to help me feel better? And if it doesn't, delay it, push it off, and say, I'll do that another time and I'll do it later. And the minute you start feeling better and the results start kicking in, the more motivating it is. Like, people always say to me, like, you must have great willpower. I have no willpower. I have none. That is why I am still carnivore and I don't go back and forth between like keto and standard diets, because I have zero willpower. And it's about creating these structures and guardrails for yourself that help you stay in the lane that you feel best. And it makes it easier to stay on track when you give yourself those tools to avoid those things.
So well said. Laura, it's been a pleasure. Tell everyone where they can find you on social media and anything else you want to share in a final comment.
Yeah, you can go to YouTube and look up Laura Spath is the best place to see all my content. I'm on Instagram a little bit, but also if I know you, there's a wonderful community here that gives people resources. And then I have a community as well where that's lauraespath.locals.com. And that's just where we encourage each other and give ideas and support. And I try to post daily and I do some live streams. So if you're wanting double extra support from the Proper Human Diet community, then you can come find us as well.
I love it. Laura Spath, everyone. An amazing story, an amazing woman, beautiful on the inside and out. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you so much. And for all of your help and information over the years and your friendship. Appreciate it.
Thank you.